A very warm welcome to all of you for the today's lecture series. And today's discussion is on Module 5. And in this Module 5, we are going to get introduced to serial communication. Okay. I, Professor Prasanna Kulkarni, working as Assistant Professor in the Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering from KLS VDIT Halia, is presenting this video series. So let us go through the discussion on today's content. The basics covered today will be on serial communication standards used in 8051, and we are going to get introduced to serial communication, the word with serial communication. After going through this video lecture series, students will have a better understanding about the term called as serial communication, the different types supported under serial communication, and the applications of these serial data transfers. The contents covered in the previous lecture have discussed a detailed port operations, and we have studied their block diagrams with read and write functions. The today's discussion is based on the applications of two important registers, that is SCON and TCON registers. So in the previous discussion we have gone through these two. These are really an essential part when we talk about the serial communication programming. So let us now get into the today's topic of discussion, that is serial communication. So let us understand the types of serial communications basically supported, or type of communications basically supported. So normally we say that there are two ways of establishing a communications between two different devices. One we called as parallel communication, and another one is called as the serial communication. So to whom we should call it as parallel communication? Oftenly when we have the more number of data lines which are connected between two devices, or which will support for a byte of data transfer, which obviously means you are sending a packet of data at the same time, and therefore in parallel communication we need a larger set of cables, and these cables will take the values, or they are conducting wires, and they carry the electrical charges. These charges are nothing but the voltages, and these voltages are oftenly read as logic 0 and logic 1 for the digital transfer of data. So when such byte of data transfer occurs at a time, then we say this type of communication as parallel communication. But the parallel communication obviously needs the larger width of wire, conductor wires, to transfer the values which they carry, and obviously because of the distance transfer is obviously limited for parallel communication. It cannot be extended for very large distances. Parallel communication only supports for small distance communication or in few feet. Therefore, parallel communication is not preferred for long distance transfers, because obviously large conductor wires are incapable of carrying charges for a very large length, and the decay of charges may happen because of the capacitance exist between two conducting wires, and therefore the charge leakage will happen when the distance or a length is very large. Therefore parallel communication is not preferred for long distance communications. Now let us go to the another type of communication called as serial communication. Here the transfer of data between the devices will happen in a bit by bit mode. The meaning is that the device will send the binary values, that is zeros and ones, but not in a stream. It is in the form of bit by bit transfer. And obviously when you compare, the length of wire obviously required will have only two, one sending and one receiving, and at a time you can send a single bit of data. So obviously the thing is that definitely serial communication appears to be very slower, because in a parallel communication we send a byte, but in serial transfer we do bit by bit transfer. Apparently it looks as if like we are doing a very low rate of data transmission in serial, but the advantage of serial communication is that because there are no parallel wires carrying charges, we have a single wire who is capable of carrying the charges, and therefore the data which is sent can be used for very long distance transfer. That is a major advantage of serial communication. Okay, so the diagrams which are represented in this slide will show you the graphical representation between a parallel and serial transfer. In parallel, you can observe there is a sender who can send all the 8 bits at a time, and every bit has its own wire for transmission. Okay, and even receiver is capable of reading all the 8 bits at a given time. So these are the needs of a parallel transfer. Your sender should be capable of sending a large size of data, and the receiver also should be capable of reading the large size of data. Obviously the hardware cost is more involved for parallel transfer. Now when you look into the serial transfer, you can observe there is a one sender and there is one receiver, and only one communication channel is established. So through this data will be transmitted, and that is what called as serial communication, or it is called as serial transfer. I think everybody have now understood what do you mean by serial and what do you mean by parallel, what are the advantages of each of them. So let us go in depth of this. Okay, at the transmitting end, the byte of data must be converted to serial bits using parallel in serial out shift register. So how do you do a normal or a real time data transmission? How do we do it in a today's technology? As we know that serial has its own advantages and parallel communication also has its own advantages. So why can't we combine them? So what we normally do, we convert all the available parallel data to serial bits. We transmit them. So number of wires required obviously gets reduced, and because you are doing parallel in serial out conversion using a shift register, therefore available data from the sender is in parallel mode, but the channel which is supported is in a serial mode. And at the receiving end exactly the reverse process, that is serial in parallel out shift registers are used. Therefore the data which is read in serial mode will be converted back to parallel mode. Through this we can achieve the larger data transfer, and also the large length of communication can be established. So this is how we do normally in today's days of communication happens on wires of this type of transmission. Therefore in the previous semester we people have studied shift registers converting serial to parallel and parallel to serial conversions. Okay, and this type of communication do not need any modulation. Okay, it doesn't need any conversion. Simply you have to convert from serial to parallel, parallel to serial. This is the advantage of making use of this. There is another way. Okay, when you look into the telephonic communication, how it happens on telephones. As you know, the output of a telephone, okay, is a audio tone. Whatever we receive is an audio tones. Then how do we do this? If data is to be transmitted on the telephone line, it must be converted from zeros and ones to audio tones. Okay, and this conversion is performed by a device called as modem. We call it as a modem. I think everybody have heard this name called as modem. So what is the job of modem? Is to convert the digital data to the audible tones. Okay, they are called as audio tones, and the expansion of modem is modulator bar demodulator. They have combined together mo and demo, so it became modem, which will do modulation and demodulation. Okay, so obviously the job of modem is to convert the binary data to audio tones, and at the receiving side it has to convert the reverse. Audio tones are converted to binary data for transmission purpose, for transmission, but at the reception again it has to be converted back to audio tones. So that is how a serial communication is used even in the modulation and demodulation techniques used for telephonic communication. So let us understand another few more examples on this. That is, serial data communication uses two important methods for data transfer. So first of all, we have understood that communication has two types, namely serial and parallel. In serial data communication, we have two methods for data transfer called as synchronous method of transfer and asynchronous method of transfer. Now, what do you mean by this? Okay, so let us understand one by one. Synchronous method transfers a block of data at a time where the block size is not fixed. I repeat, synchronous method transfers a block of data at a time wherein the size of block is not fixed. This method of transfer is called as synchronous method of transfer of data. So let us elaborate it and understand this. Okay, that in synchronous mode of transfer, it is the requirement of the receiver with respect to the sender. If the receiver says, I am capable of reading 10 bits at a time, the sender can now frame a block of data of 10 bits. At the other end, if the receiver says, I am ready to read 20 bits, the synchronous method transfers obviously the size of block as the requirement of the receiver. And this is how this type of communication, you are sending bit by bit, but the chunk of data or it is a block of data size is not fixed. And that type of transfer are called as synchronous method of transfer, and definitely these type of methods need a software program, and these programs obviously will be very tedious and they will be very long. Therefore, they have some internal ICs who have already programmed with such type of software. Those ICs are meant for to be used for setting up the communications, that too in synchronous mode of transfers. Has everybody understood what is now synchronous mode of transfer is all about? Now let us understand what is asynchronous method of transfers. Now in asynchronous method of serial data transfer, the chunk of data or a block of data is a size is fixed. Its size is fixed. Normally for asynchronous method, it is always a single byte at a time. It means always the sender has fixed upon, I'll be sending 1 byte at a time. Okay, even if your reception is 2 bytes at a time, I can send only 1 byte at a time. Okay, this type of transfer of data is called as asynchronous method of transfer, and this is one of the simplest way of serial data communication, because it do not need any software program, nor it needs any tedious and long process, and there is no even need of very big IC sizes. Okay, so therefore there are two different ICs normally used, one which supports for synchronous communication, another which supports for asynchronous type of communication. Now what these ICs are called as? So manufacturers have prepared these type of ICs for with respect to the type of communication the devices undergo. So there are two type of ICs which normally we see for communication purpose. So the first one is called as UART. We call it as UART, means universal asynchronous receiver transmitter. So this type of IC will support for asynchronous communication, that is called as UART, universal asynchronous receiver transmitter. The other one is called as USART, USART. USART stands for universal synchronous asynchronous receiver transmitter. Now you can see that it will support for both way of transfers, synchronous as well as asynchronous receptions. Okay, so therefore normally the UART are easiest one. The USART is a very complex one because it needs an software which will write program as per the requirement of the data that is to be transferred. Okay, I think everybody have understood now what are the important types of communications used in serial. So there is some more way of identifying the type of communications we can establish with an examples. We'll try to understand in the next slide. Okay, normally we say that three type of communications can happen, maybe for serial or parallel. You can take it for both. These three type of communications are normally used. If data can be transmitted and received, it is called as a duplex transmission. Okay, both data can be sent and also it can be received, then that type of communications are called as duplex communication. If data can be transmitted only one way, okay, so one will be a transmitter, another will be a receiver, that is fixed, then that is called as the simplex communication. The simplex communication. So let us understand all of these three types with respect to the diagrams which are quoted in this slide. The first one is called a simplex. That is, you have one fixed transmitter, and always the receiver job is to get the data from the transmitter, and at no point of time a receiver can send the data back to transmitter. This type of communication is called as simplex communication. Now the best example is our radio stations. There is a fixed transmitter and all our radios are nothing but they are receivers. So our job is to only receive the data. So this is one of the example for your simplex communication. Okay, let us go to the second type now, called as half duplex. Half duplex. Okay, now we can see the diagram. At one side you got transmitter and receiver both, and the other side also got transmitter and receiver both, but the only problem is that there is only one channel. There is only one channel. The meaning is that if the left hand part acts as a transmitter, the right hand part can act only as a receiver. And similarly, the right hand part, if it acts as a transmitter, the left hand part will act as a receiver. The meaning is that both have to receive or transmit the data on a common channel. So therefore they can receive, they can send, but at a given time. Not at the same time. Both cannot send, both cannot receive. That is the meaning of half duplex communication. Now what is best example of this is called as walkie-talkie. Okay, I think you might have heard a policeman having an walkie-talkie. Okay, either you can receive or you can send, but you cannot do the both jobs at the same time. Either you can receive the data, and after some time, even if you want, you can also send the data, but at the same time both sending and receiving is not possible. That type of communication is called as half duplex communication. Now let us go to the third one, called as full duplex communication. You can observe at any given point of time the transmitter can become a receiver can become a transmitter. So there are two separate channels dedicatedly available, and therefore at the same time sending of data as well as receiving of data can happen. Now what is the best example of this? It's your telephone or a mobile phone or a simple two-way communication call, where you can speak, the receiver can listen to it, and at the same time the receiver can speak and even you can listen to the words. So this is one of the example for full duplex communication. I think everybody have understood now what is called as simplex. One we call it as half duplex and one we call it as the full duplex. So let us understand some more important aspects of this, the communications. Okay, the word which you normally use in any communication is called as the protocol. Now what do you mean by protocol? Okay, a protocol is a set of rules agreed by both the sender and the receiver on how the data is packed, how many bits constitute a character, and when data begins and when it ends. Okay, so I think these words are very clear. They are very simply framed. I have not used any textbook definitions for them. The way how one can understand the sequencing is done accordingly. A protocol is a simple guidelines. Okay, it is being agreed by both sender and receiver that how data will be packed, or in the meaning is that how much is the size of my data I'm going to transmit at a time. Secondly, how do a data begins, with what notification I will inform you that I am sending a data, and with what notification I will convey you that my data transfer is ended. These set of rules are called as protocols. So every communication in this entire world will have a protocol for the transfer, starting from a simple radio communication to long range radio signal communication happens in universe, outside the universe through satellites, will have a protocol, and therefore this protocol is one of the important aspects in communication standards. So today I've just understood what do you mean by protocol is all about. Okay, let us go to the next important aspect of this. Asynchronous serial data communication is widely used for character oriented transmissions. Okay, this is one of the important point about the synchronous data communication is that since the size of character is fixed, the block of size of character is done, it is fixed, and therefore the best way of sending a characters, symbols, or ASCII values or your keyboard characters, the best way of transmission is always asynchronous serial data communication, because each character is placed, it is placed between the two important bits called as start bit and stop bits, and this framing is always is block oriented. It means the set of 8 bits will have starting bit and will have an ending bit, and these will inform to the receiver that whatever data that appears between these two, it is a frame of data which actually a transmitter is sending, and this way of transfer is called as the asynchronous method of transfer, or your block is fixed. This is how I'm sending my data. Okay, and therefore it do not need any software for monitoring this type of process, because it always knows that I am sending 8 bits, along with that 2 extra bits are being sent every time. So therefore I need not use any software, specialized software to monitor this job. Okay, for example, if in a class, if every student attends daily without missing, I need not to maintain a muster for recording the attendance. But if the student starts missing the classes randomly, it becomes very difficult for us to monitor, and therefore a muster to be employed. And this is how I need to think, I need to enact to the difference of attendance. Therefore I need a software, I need intelligence, I need a brain. I think everybody have understood with this example what is asynchronous and what is a synchronous method of transfer. Okay, so let us come back to the discussion. The start bit is always 1 bit, and the stop bit normally uses 1 or more bits for the synchronous method of transfers. In synchronous, always information is a must to be conveyed when it starts, when it ends. But for asynchronous, we need only 1 bit, start bit and 1 stop bit. But for synchronous method of transfer, we use always a start bit is of 1 bit, but stop bits will be 1 or 2 bits are used for synchronous method of transfer, because the block size is not fixed. Normally, the start bit is always considered as a low pulse. Always start bit is always used as a low pulse, and the stop bit is always used as a high pulse, or the logic 1 pulse is used for this. So let us see a simple example on this, how the data framing is done. Suppose I want to transfer an ASCII character. Let us have a capital A. Okay, I want to transfer this capital A. Okay, in the value is in 41H. In hexadecimal it is 41. Binary it is 0100 00001. This is the data I want to transfer, capital A. Let us see, from my CPU I want to send this data to a printer. Capital A I want to send it. How do I send the data then? Always the data framing starts. Okay, observe from the right hand side that first value called as mark. After that mark, whatever you see is a start bit, and start bit is always logic 0. And after that, whatever you send is a data. Since I am sending capital A, I will fit that 8 bits after that start bit, and after D0 to D7, 8 bits are fixed. The last bit will be the stop bit. So whenever this sequence occurs, for example, for a computer, how does it receive? First it receives 0, followed by that A character in binary representation, and character will be logic 1. So whatever comes between 0 and 1, size of 8 bits, okay, between them size of 8 bits will be taken as one block, and that one block will be sent to the receiver, and receiver will decode it. It will remove the start bit, it will remove the stop bit, and only it extracts the data. That is how the communication is established between the sender and the receiver. This is called as the data transmission. So in machines, always data are transmitted in this particular transmission method. So go through, let us understand about this in a detailed look. Suppose for each ASCII characters which are transmitted in the previous, we have transmitted capital E. Suppose such way, if I start transmitting the data, obviously you can see that there is some overhead. How do you mean by overhead? Actually ASCII character is 8 bits, but I am sending 10 bits for each character. So for each character I'm sending 2 bits extra. So 2 bit extra actually required are 8, but I am sending 10, and therefore my obviously overhead will be 25%. 25% is an overhead. It means even if you say that I am doing 100 bits per second, 80 are actual data, 20 are the start and stop bits for transmission. And okay, I think this is what called as the concept of wavelength consumption by the overhead, which we use for our communication topics. Okay, so let us not go into this. Let us understand first of all this point. Then in the days to come, where we'll go through the communication part also. Okay, so extra 2 bits are used for our data transmissions. Okay, but in some methods, like in especially in UART chips and USART chips, along with it 2 extra bits, they add one more bit also. Okay, whenever we need security of data, when the question comes on the security of transmission, then another bit is added, and that bit is called as the parity bit. Normally we use odd parity, even parity, and even no parity bits also are the options available for data transmission. This is used especially for the secured data transfer, secured data. Okay, that time we will be making use of this type of communication standards also. Okay, so let us understand now some of the measurement parameters on serial data communication. The rate of data transfer in serial communication is always measured, or it is always stated in BPS. This stands for bits per second. So always serial communication data transmission is measured in BPS, bits per second. You might have observed in the 3G, 4G communication, always we use Mbps. That is nothing but megabits per second is the transmission rate. So therefore, BPS is one of the standard unit used for the measurement of serial data communication. Another widely used terminology for BPS is baud rate. Okay, so another one important is called as baud rate. Then what is the difference between them? BPS and baud rate, what is the difference? Okay, let us understand this. The meaning of baud rate means that it is a number of signal changes per second, and BPS stands for number of bits per second. Let us understand this concept very clearly, that the number of signal may have internally, okay, each signal may have internally 8 bits. So in SP signal changes per second, I say that one signal changed per second. But in BPS, same, now it is called as 8 BPS, 8 bits per second. So therefore the signal comprises of number of bits. So therefore signal changes per second is called as baud rate. Bits changes per second is called as the bits per second, BPS rate. Okay, then where they are used in the modem technology, or in the modem, it is always the audio tones, and each audio tone internally comprises of 8 bits. So therefore in modem we use baud rate, signal changes per second or audio tone changes per second. Therefore we use terminology called as baud rate for the modem transmission measurement. Whereas for a normal equipment which do not work on any audio tones nor uses any characters for directly for measurement, always use binary as a measurement factor, then we use BPS, or it is called as bits per second. Okay, so therefore only for modem technology your BPS and baud rate will differ. If it is a normal simple device who works simply on binary data transmissions, the BPS and baud rate remains to be the same. I think everybody have understood this. Okay, so let's go to the way of transmission which are till now we have achieved. What is the different rates of transmission that we have achieved? Okay, depends on different systems, depends on the ICs used for communication. The transfer rate definitely differs, but there are some standards which are being framed, universal accepted standards for communication, because if everybody starts manufacturing devices with a different baud rate, it becomes very difficult for interconnection. Therefore universally there are some standard baud rates which are fixed, and IBM uses the standard baud rate starting from 100 bps up to 9600 bps. But presently, we have seen the devices working for the higher baud rates also, like Pentium based PCs. Now they can go up to 56 kbps, kilobits per second, and in asynchronous mode of serial communication, we can reach up to 100 kbps, 100 kilobits per second. We can go up to the rate of transmission. You can observe it is a very large size of data. It looks very simple to pronounce them, but internally it is a very large size, 100 kilobits per second. So very large size of data in 1 second what we are transmitting. Okay, so this is how communication standards, communication possible data that you have tried to understand. Okay, now one more important usage of this serial communication. When initially it was started, okay, serial communication was a very new word. There are different people who came up, especially called as Electronic Industries Association, called as EIA, which is established in 1960, came up with a simple transfer communication cable, okay, which uses some standard protocol, and that is called as RS-232. So let us understand what is RS-232. RS-232 is an interfacing standard used in these olden days to set a communication between two different devices on serial path. How do you establish serial communication between two devices? And they established standards called as RS-232 in 1960s. And in 1960s, still there were no development of TTL logic families, that is called a transistor logic. Still they were not found, they were not in usage. Okay, that time the RS-232 has used different voltage levels. Okay, not like a TTL compatible. They were not TTL compatible because TTL was not even invented. They had their own logic values to represent. Example, in RS-232 in 1960s, they used to always represent a logic 1 by a negative voltage, and the range for negative voltage was -3 to -25. Means the devices were not so stable, having a voltage range very minimum differences. There was large tolerance available. -3 to -25 was to be considered as logic 1, whereas logic 0 was considered from +3 to +25. Logic 0, again a wide range of difference in voltage, +3 to +25 volt, to be considered as the logic 0, okay, in RS-232 standards. And also -3 to +3, that range, okay, is called as forbidden range, or it is not defined, it is called forbidden. Okay, so you can see that in 1960s the voltage ranges were so differences being used, but presently we are having very minor differences, like 0.1 volt also has lot of importance for us. Okay, that is called as energy saving concept. So let us understand now what happened in 1960s. How was that RS-232 initially? Let us see with a diagram. Okay, I think everybody is seeing this RS-232 diagram, how it looks. Okay, had total 25 pins. You can see that on top row had 13 pins and the bottom row had 12 pins. I think this pin everybody has observed it. Okay, especially this was used for the serial printer communication. In the earlier old PCs, this cable everybody has seen it. It is having 25 pins, very thick cable which used to connect, and it had 25 various pins. Okay, it has supported both primary transmission and the secondary transmissions also. So all 25 pins has their own job to perform. It was in 1960s when initially RS-232 was found out. These were different things. Now can observe each pin in that DB25, we call it as DB25, had a significance. Each pin had a significance. Out of them, some of them are very important, like TXD, pin number 2, used for transmission of data. Pin number 3, reception of data, called as RXD. Pin number 4 is request to send. Pin number 5 is clear to send. 6th is data set ready. 7th is signal ground. Okay. Pin number 8 is data carrier detect. So these are all of them are very important pins. Then similarly, pin number 20 is data terminal ready, DTR. Okay, these are some of the important pins used for this. And pin number 22 is a ring indicator. Suppose you want to produce a ring, a buzzer, then pin number 22 was used on those days. I think these are some of the important pins. Okay, rest all were used for secondary data receptions. This is for primary data receptions. Okay, so since in DB25 there were excess pins available, there were extra pins available, therefore the IBM has come up with the idea that why can't we reduce it, since all the 25 pins we don't use for communication purpose, some of them pins are extra, so let us only take those pins which are very much necessary for establishing serial communications, and that is been reduced. The DB25 was reduced, and the new RS232 had only 9 pins. Out of 25 they took only 9 pins, which are very, very important or essential pins, and those 9 pins they called it as DB9, so which I'll show it in the next slide. So the DB9 version of serial communication had 5 pins in the top row and 4 pins in the bottom row. I think this one is one of the standard RS232 which you use in our lab applications. I think everybody has seen it. You people have used this. You have connected this through your system. You are connected to your microcontroller kit, the same DB9 which I am talking right now. You people have used it already. Okay, so which are those 9 pins available? Then let us find it out. Okay, and also we'll discuss about the applications of these 9 pins used. The first one, pin number 1, is called as data carrier detect. The job of this is to find out, is there a successful communication has established between the sending and the receiving equipment. The pin number 2 is for reception of data, purely meant for receiving the data. Pin number 3 is purely meant for transmitting the data. So if the pin number 2 and 3 gets damaged, you cannot send or you cannot receive data. Therefore, we used to tell you in the lab, please be careful with the pin connections, please don't break them. This was what the reason why we have told this, that not to break the pins, because each pin has its own significance. The next one, pin number 4 is called as data terminal ready, stands for DTR. It is an indication from the data terminal equipment saying that I am ready. Okay, fifth one is called a signal ground, but is a common ground between sender and a receiver pin. Pin number 6 is called as data set ready. So this again an acknowledgement from the data equipment saying that I am ready for sending. I am ready for sending. Seventh one is called as request to send. It is an reverse acknowledgement produced saying that I am requesting you to send the information. I am ready and I am ready to receive it. Then CTS, pin number 8, is called as clear to send, which is indication that the data is successfully received and it has been accepted. The last pin, pin number 9, is called as a ring indicator. Okay, so if you want to produce any ring on a receiver device, that pin number 9 is used. Okay, so this is one of the standard DB9 pin used in present day. In the present day, we use this only. So there is a simple connection called as a null modem connection, which you will see in the next slide. The current terminology has classified data communication equipment as DT, called as now data terminal equipment. Refers to terminal and computers that send the data. Okay, whatever equipment which is presently sending a data is called as DTE, Similarly, the equipment which is ready to receive, which is presently working as a receiver, called as DCE, called as data communication equipment, such as modems. I think understood? Two terminal, DTE and DCE, data terminal equipment, data communication equipment. Okay, this is how we call them as, because there are thousands of receivers and transmitters have come up in market. We cannot name them separately. So whichever is sending, we call it as DT. Whichever is receiving, call it as DC. Right? Okay. So next one. The next diagram which is shown in the slide, which will show you a very simple basic connection. How can we set between a microcontroller and a PC and a microcontroller? How can we connect them? It's simplest possible connection between them. Okay. A simplest way of doing is called as null modem connection. It means I will not use any modem. No modem is used. Directly sending data without any usage of modem is called as null modem connection. So how do we do this? What we do? So the pin of DT, that is a TXD, is connected as RxD pin of DCE, the DT, the RxD pin of DT is connected as TXD pin of DC. So receiver is connected to transmitter, transmitter is connected to the receiver and a common ground. If you do this, you are ready to send a data. You are ready to send data without any interference. Are you getting this one? This is how we can send, or we can connect a simple serial device to microcontroller also. Okay, PC also can be connected to 8051. So let us now go through all the 9 pins of this DB9 and try to understand them in a very technical way. What is DTR stands for? DTR is one of the signal used there. Okay, data terminal ready. When terminal is turned on, it sends out signal DTR to indicate that it is ready for communication. This is one of the signal used for information that I am ready for communication. Second one called DSR stands for data set ready. When DC is turned on and has gone through the self test, it asserts DSR to indicate that it is ready to communicate. Like how DT sends a pulse that I am ready, saying that DTR. Similarly, DC also sends a pulse saying DSR, even I am ready. Data set is also ready for reception. Understood? Next one, RTS, called as request to send. When the DTA device has byte to transfer, okay, first was ready. Now it has got a byte to transfer. Then it asserts RTS signal, the modem, it has a byte of data to transmit. So whenever the data is available for transmission, it asserts a signal called as RTS. These all signals are called as handshaking signals. Technically we call handshaking signals. Like whenever we get introduced to a new person, okay, in real time, we obviously introduce ourselves, we tell where we are from, where do we work. Like way, when two devices they communicate, they exchange these signals, and therefore the communication is established. We simply plug in a cable, but internally when you plug in a cable, these are various steps a device undergoes. So let us understand. I think now everybody have understood what I am speaking about. Let us understand. So RTS, it is a signal raised when the byte of data is available at DTE. Next one, CTS. When modem has room for storing the data, it is to receive. It sends out a signal CTS to DTE to indicate that it can receive the data now. So DTE's job is over. It has said that a data is available and it asserts RTS. But until unless receiver is not ready, the data will not be sent. And to inform this, the DCE device sends a signal called as CTS, clear to send, indicating that I am ready to receive a data and I am free. Please send me your data. That is called as CTS. Right? The next one called as DCD, data carrier detect. The modem asserts a signal DCD to inform the DT that a valid carrier has been detected and that contact between it and the other modem is established. So DCD is information by the data receiving equipment saying that a successful communication is now possible and I am ready for reception. That is called as data carrier detect. Then lastly called a ring indicator. This ring indicator is just a simply ringing tone. Normally in earlier days, okay, this pin number 9 was used for ringing purpose. It is used only for ringing, normally telephone ringing. But presently in modern devices, we don't use any such ringing presently. So normally we don't use for present interconnections. Okay, but still that pin is still available in that DB9 pin also. I think everybody have now understood what I wanted to talk about, and we have discussed only on basics of communication. Then we found out type of basic serial communications available, the how data framing is done, what do you mean by protocol, what are the real communication standards used, how do a different type of RS standards were being made like RS-232. That all we have discussed in today's lecture series. I hope so that everybody have understood what we have discussed in today's lecture series, and in days to come. In the next upcoming lecture series, we'll have better knowledge on the next session of the serial communication also, and also we'll have some programs also been introduced in the upcoming video lecture series. Till then, please go through this, try to understand what all content that has been posted. Definitely from exam point of view, all these points are very important. Okay, and focus on your studies. So I request everybody that please be safe, take care of yourself, and please do start studying. Okay, so with this I say thank you to one and all, and please focus. Okay, if you have any doubts, you can just send me your doubts, or you can send me an email if you got any problem statement, and definitely a reply will be received from my end. I thank you for listening to this video lecture series. Thank you one and all.